Hello, welcome to Ballot Box. I'm Tim Miller. I'm here with Bill Kristol, and he is in a state about the state of affairs, and so I'm excited to hear about it. I want to start with this: Tucker Carlson, Bill, your old pal, your old employee, I think. He's in Moscow tonight, and he's just published a video where he explains that he is going to be interviewing Vladimir Putin, and he must do that because the media is blocking the people from hearing Russia's side of the story when it comes to their invasion, and he wants to deliver the truth. I would have to note before I throw it to you, for anyone that is open to that explanation from Tucker, that if he was actually there to report the truth, he would be in very grave danger, as is evidenced by the fact that Evan Gershkowitz and Alsu Kurmasheva have been imprisoned in Russia for actually trying to report the truth, American journalists. But Bill, what do you think? Tucker in Russia. What's your where do you want to go with that?
As you said, I'm in a state. I feel like if I could talk in all caps the way Trump could tweet in all caps, I'd be in all caps today. The Republicans on Ukraine, Tucker Carlson, who I did once work at the Weekly Standard many years ago, they're sucking up to justifying a brutal dictator, brutal at home, brutal to Russian journalists, obviously, who he's had killed, brutal to American journalists who he's imprisoned, brutal, God knows, to Ukrainians. And he's just there to do an interview. And it's just sickening. I really, that's how I feel. I'm just sickened by what Tucker's doing. And I'm pretty sickened by the Republicans on the Hill. I thought you and I, it takes a lot to shock either you or me these days about our former party. Yeah. But I find this the last couple of days, even as I say, I'm in all caps on it,
Yeah. Before we get to the Hill, the Tucker situation, to me, it's also alarming, like the lack of alarm that people are having. I think that there is kind of this sanguine feeling now. It's like, oh, well, that's just Tucker. He's being Tucker. And it's like, this guy has maybe not the same kind of platform that he had in Fox, but still a very large platform. And he seems clearly, we haven't seen the interview yet, but poised to give a very sympathetic hearing to Vladimir Putin in the midst of this. Like, where, shouldn't there be more Bill Kristols? Like, why is there not all caps alarm among Tucker's former Fox colleagues, other folks, Republicans on the Hill, Mitch McConnell, right, pushing back on, the fact that such a prominent figure in the movement is I guess, prepared to be kind of an American Sputnik.
I mean, I tweeted a couple of days ago. I almost never tweet at people, but this was at Liz Harrington, who I believe is Trump's spokesperson, saying, could you ask Mr. Trump what he thinks about Tucker Carlson going to Moscow, at his pilgrimage to Moscow? I have not heard back. I don't really check.
I did notice some on the right got mad at you because you did another tweet. You're known to tweet, or to X, whatever we're calling them, and about how maybe Tucker shouldn't be invited back into the country, and some of them didn't like that, and they were like, "This is evidence, Bill. Your joke is evidence that Bill Kristol is the real fascist and the real authoritarian."
I know you make a joke, mimic Trump's Muslim ban tweet, and obviously kind of a joke, but if he deserves to be let back in a lot less than a heck of a lot of immigrants at the border, if I could say, who want to come to America. Maybe they should come legally, maybe they should whatever, but you know what? They want to come here and be loyal and patriotic Americans, not defenders of Putin, to the best of my knowledge. So I'm standing by that joke, even though it was a joke. But you're right. Where is the outrage? As Bob Dole famously said in 1996. Jane Fonda went to Hanoi in 1972. I was in college, and I remember, I was already I was a hawk, so I was outraged. But I kind of think even normal liberals, and even left liberals, even George McGovern supporters, were like, well, that's beyond the bounds. You go into Hanoi and sort of being pro-Viet Cong, where we're fighting them, or we have people like John McCain captured there. As you said, I was going to say, it's not a good analogy because we're fighting U.S. soldiers and we had prisoners of war. But what about the analogy of the American journalists? To say nothing of the Russians and Ukrainians and all the other people whom Putin has been brutal too. So yeah,
yeah, and I think that this won't get asked. This is what I like to just bring up for people who are talking to friends in this world, because I think that there's a sympathetic in the kind of contrarian Joe Rogan, Theo Von, like in this kind of podcast world, there is intellectual dark web. These folks, there's a sense of like, oh, the media, the military industrial complex, they're not telling you the truth about what's going on in Ukraine, and they're in the pocket of Zelensky. And again, maybe there are things to be revealed about the way that corruption in Ukraine. I don't think that everything is going perfect in Ukraine. I'm perfectly open to investigative journalism about how resources are being deployed and what we're sending them. But the idea that they're going to actually butter up Putin is illuminating in any way, or is anything other than propaganda for Russia, is just totally undermined by the fact that Putin kills and kidnaps any journalists that do. I like talk to the family of Evan Gershkowitz if you think that this is real journalism.
Yeah, I mean, or the political prisoners in Russia, the families of those he said killed, and said nothing of the Ukrainians. Like, you coming back to, I mean, you're sitting with a mass murderer, and you're being polite. Fine, maybe you'll ask one or two fake, tough questions you seem to have locked up. What about these American journalists? We'll say whether they're being investigated about the legal system. Thank you, Mr. President, right? And so that'll be a tough interview, But he's sitting with a mass murderer, and he's being polite. And as you say, no one here seems particularly upset about it.
On his side, at least, of things. It's sick. It is sick. Okay, as to the actual policy element on the Hill, and we've done this a few times, so I don't know we need to belabor the point that, at least on this show, we both find it absurd, like that the Ukraine military assistance is tied to what's happening on the border at all, and it's a ridiculous conceit. It would have been akin to the Democrats, in back 10 years ago, being like telling George Bush that like we need Medicare for all if we're going to support Afghanistan funding. I mean, like the things are not related, and should never have been related. But that said, that was the offer that was put on the table. Joe Biden says yes to the offer. Says yes, basically concedes. There's cuts a deal where there's no meaningful immigration reform of any of the things that liberal or progressives activists would want. There's not, amnesty. The Dreamers aren't even included in this. Not even the most sympathetic immigrants, undocumented immigrants, are included. It is a strict bill about border security funding, revamping the asylum system, limiting, giving more powers to the president, which you think that they would want, the Republicans would want, if there's ever to be a Republican president again, to shut down the border if certain thresholds are met. That's all this bill is, and here they are out there. They've completely rejected it and seem happy, frankly, to just let support for Ukraine wither and die.
I mean, the test. They say they're for Ukraine. Some of them, we can't do the border thing. That's just so terrible. After insisting that Biden do the border thing. Fine. So let's pass Ukraine aid tomorrow. You know what? Right. Let's have 80 votes. Connell and Schumer go to the floor, filibuster broken, cloture invoked, and get it to the House. A little more complicated in the House with the Speaker, but I believe you could if you got 75 votes in the Senate, which you should be able to get if all the people who say they're for helping Ukraine really are, and if the border was the problem. Fine, but they're not. But we'll see if the Democrats do that. Some Republicans apparently are talking about it. I think Schumer should call their bluff on that. Instead, I'm a little worried the Democrats are going to call the Republicans' bluff on the border and bring that up. What does that prove? I mean, half the Democrats don't like that bill. But, one of your favorite points, that Democrats are not as horribly left-wing and woke as every Republican we know or used to know, all of our ex-friends say. Biden dragged, 95%, it looked like, if it had been a real vote of the Democratic senators along to a policy that they hate. That is not just a kind of, it's a little bit tough on the border. That has all kinds of serious policy changes that they, sometimes for good reasons, incidentally, think are kind of inhumane and bad, inappropriate and bad policy. It mess up our immigration policy even more than it's messed up now. They were all willing to swallow hard and take it. Why? Because they care about Ukraine. To their credit, I mean, they are actually behaving like a patriotic party, and the Republicans aren't.
They were going to agree to a wall. I mean, like, it's preposterous. Like, they're putting up Donald Trump's barrier, which would get 0 Democratic votes in a different context. More, I guess maybe certain barrier, limited, targeted, wall and barriers would get votes, but like the extent that was in this bill, would not get any Democratic support. So like that part of this is very frustrating. To your point about the individual votes. Again, if the Republicans are true to what they say, the remaining people that we're always talking about, the handful of Republicans who still care about policy, Tom Tillis in the Senate, Todd Young, these sorts, and the House would be the Mike Gallaghers of the world, to be the McHenrys until he leaves, like that kind of crowd. Assuming they all believe what they say, then a vote on all three of these items would probably pass as a standalone, and a vote on them all together would probably pass, right? It's like, so it's just a question of getting it up to a vote. Like whether there are 10 in the Senate for all three of the, like that'd be the big question. Like, are there 10 Republicans or are there 7 Republicans in the Senate for any combination of those things? But Chuck Schumer should really bring up all of them in different orders and figure it out and put pressure on them. But if they don't get to 60 in the Senate, then that's it. What is your sense for the practical implications for Ukraine?
I mean, different people have different degrees of alarm, but it's extremely risky. I mean, it's certainly going to cost lives. It's certainly going to cost, momentum in the war, whether it's a decisive setback or a bad setback. I can't judge, and I don't know that anyone really knows at this point. But I just had your point about the senators and the members of the House, Republicans. Speakers, I love Speaker's not going to bring it to the floor. Hey, you know what? Each of these members has agency. 4 Republican House members could say, you know what? If you don't bring that to the floor, I'm supporting a motion to vacate. I'm supporting Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker. I'm fed to the Democratic caucus for 1 week just so we can pass this super important, crucial piece of legislation. Then I'll come back. They have a million things. They can say nothing of discharge petitions and more normal ways of bringing pressure. And the idea that these individual members have no agency, no ability to make anything happen. And I was saying with the senators, if Tillis and Romney and all these people care, Romney should literally leave the Republican conference today if they are not willing to vote for, in my opinion, given what he said, and I believe he believes it, and he's been honorable in other ways, if they're not willing to vote to help Ukraine. How can he be part of that party? Why would he go to their stupid Tuesday lunches if this is the party that's selling out Ukraine?
Concur. On the politics really quick of this, obviously this is one instance where the policy weight of this is so much greater than kind of the political implications, but it is in some ways kind of the first, I'd say normal is the wrong word, but traditional kind of campaign dispute, right? That we would have seen during a Romney-Obama type election, right? Where there is something tangible. We're not talking about, conspiracy theories. It's not Donald Trump just name calling. Look, what we have here is that Donald Trump is against this bipartisan bill that Langford and Sinema, et cetera, put forth. He has said on the campaign trail, he said today that he wants to go ahead and let Americans blame him for sabotaging the deal. He said that some Republican senators have been tiptoeing around that. He's like, fine, blame me, it's a bad deal. Biden retweeted that by saying, okay, we will. You got it, was the exact language. And so it seems like the Biden campaign, the Biden White House, and the Trump campaign, both see this as a winning issue for them. Trump on the side of just letting border chaos reign and not wanting to actually solve anything, and Biden on saying, hey, I'm the person that actually wants to do something about this and willing to work with Republicans. How do you think that shakes out in a campaign setting?
I really don't know, and I'm not sure we can know at this point. It's been so, Biden, to his credit, I think, in many ways, has tried to mute partisan discord on this issue because he wants to have a deal. I mean, that's the deal they came up with on Sunday, which the Republicans had vetoing. So he hasn't been attacking the Republicans for total irresponsibility on immigration and stuff. And he thinks he's playing defense on the issue too, because of the polls. But I don't know what I've always suspected that the country is not as right-wing on immigration as everyone says it is, including not just Republicans, but 3/4 of the Democrats in Washington who are in a huge defensive crouch. Now, it's easy for me to say I'm not out there running races. Probably did hurt in 2016, migration crisis in Europe, and Trump's Muslim ban. You were there in another campaign. Seems not to have hurt him when everyone said it was going to hurt him. Helped him, right? So maybe I'm just wish casting here, and thinking that Democrats could actually win a debate in favor of a realistic, more humane, but actually real immigration policy as opposed to Biden's nativist, as opposed to Trump's nativist demagoguery. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I really don't know. But it'd be interesting if Biden could really engage it in a serious way with the party behind him in a real engagement, not one set of remarks.
Right. Well, I think that's key. A real campaign on this is going to be important. I'm less optimistic than you that Biden could win on the merits of an immigration discussion. To me, though, is there a way to win on, like, we actually need to care about this? Like, government actually needs to work, chaos versus order. I think that some would push back on that and say, well, look, I mean, there's chaos right now. Biden's in there, the border's chaos. So that will be the Trump team's pushback to that, which I think will have some salience with certain voters. But I think with a lot of the key voters, it is, can you make a broader pitch that says, I worked with NATO on the Ukraine thing. I want NATO to work. I worked with Israel, despite my disagreements with Bibi on certain things. Domestically, I worked with Republicans. We did chips. We did infrastructure. We did a reasonable gun reform bill that didn't take your guns. Right? Like, I did that. We will continue to do that. And that is what we're offering for another term. What he's offering is, total chaos, nihilism, dismantling the government, retribution, etc. Is there a way to create that frame where this is a data point in it? I kind of think so. I do think so. But again, that has to be relentless, and Biden's going to need other people helping him carry that message.
A friend of mine who's been involved in a lot of this stuff in the last few years said he liked, he's not a huge Nikki Haley fan, but he liked one of Nikki's more most recent messages, phrases, slogans, make America normal again. And he thought that would, which is a version of what you're saying. And he thought that would resonate. You know what? We have bipartisan deals on some key issues and then just go ahead and pass them and enforce them. Could we have actually, when we're in government, try to solve problems? The current Republican position is this problem can't be dealt with, can't just be dealt with. Not until the election, which is what people say, but until presumably Trump is president, if he wins, which would be January 20th, which is more than 11 months, right? It's a year from that. I mean, I can't even think of a case like this. McConnell refused to confirm, obviously, Merrick Garland exactly around this point, for a year. But okay, the Supreme Court functioned. I mean, it had 8 justices. Right. I mean, here we're literally saying this is a crisis. It's a bunch of problems. It's problems at the border, problems in cities. I think those problems are exaggerated, but whatever. They are what they are. But the Republicans are certainly into how serious they are. We're not going to do anything, not for 2 weeks, not for 6 weeks, not like a government shutdown to get a better option. We're not going to do anything for 11 months. Is that really defensible? I don't know.
Right. And the case, like the most, the erudite defenders of Trump, our friends Andy McCarthy, et cetera, like their defense of this is, well, you don't need to do this because if Biden wants this, he can just fix it himself. And I think that if this deal crashes, that there are certain emergency orders that Biden can put through. But is that really what we want? I mean, one friend sent me the Andy McCarthy article this morning. I was reading it. And McCarthy's opinion is that it's within the president's jurisdiction to just shut down accepting all asylees. Like, presidents can just not accept asylees. And I'm not a lawyer, but we have actual asylum laws in the code, right? Like there are existing rules for how we manage asylees. Now that system is being overrun. There are ways to change it. Are there ways that temporarily a president could call up emergency orders? Like, yeah, of course. But I the notion that they're putting forth to me seems just frankly un-American, right? That it's like, okay, the alternative here is we don't need to pass a bill and we need to make it incumbent on Biden to turn us into Eastern Europe in the Soviet era where nobody's allowed in.
Who went craziest when Biden, interpreted a gray area of student loan debt repayment law and said, I'm forgiving this. And the Supreme Court said, no, you went too far. Biden said, okay, I can't do that. I can do some other stuff. Right? But who said he's a dictator? You, Bill and Tim say Trump's a dictator. Biden's just as bad. What he did on debt relief is just like what Trump did on January 6th. So now they're in favor of Biden basically doing much more dramatic things with no congressional authorization.
Insane. Yeah. Okay. I want to shut us down. I want to close this down here. Oh my God. We have so much to get to. I forgot about, we had the Trump immunity case. We have a lot of news happening. So the appeals court took a little longer than I'd like, but they wrote a pretty tight ruling about how Donald Trump is not a king and he's not completely immune. This was not a shocking result. Trump's now has a week to decide whether he wants to appeal to SCOTUS. I presume that he will. Then SCOTUS will have to decide whether or not they want to accept or deny certification on this. You'd figure that Roberts and the three Democrats would agree with the appeals court and not feel like there's much need for the Supreme Court to take this. Then you have the other five, harder to gauge, what Barrett and Kavanaugh might do, or Gorsuch. What is your take on this, just as far as, how quickly this thing could be resolved and what to expect from SCOTUS?
I think the range of options is the Supreme Court denies cert, which I think only 4 justices are necessary to grant cert, though. So you don't need 12.
Right. They need 6. So yeah, you need the 3 left, Roberts, and then 2 of the others. You need two of basically Roberts, Barrett, and Kavanaugh.
So I don't know, with a case for the president like this, they could deny cert. Even that would take a couple of weeks now. But then the clock would start ticking in terms of the actual district judge court trial. And they've lost about 2.5 months by the time that's done. So if you add 2.5 months to March 4th, in a sense, that's what the judge sort of promised the defense. They would have the same amount of time to prepare. You're into March, April, May, mid-late May. That's, I think, the earliest, realistically, with the Supreme Court denying cert and saying, get to it, you're back at the district court, no more excuses, no baloney, no stays. You're looking at a mid-May trial, maybe. If they were to grant cert, even if they have expedited hearings, oral opinion, then you're looking back into maybe a June trial, July. If they really go
in July,
more, it could be even later. Voting conventions, July. It gets pretty. We're really getting close to, I think, the practicable limits of what it could happen. Now, the lawyers I know say, look, hey, this is a legal case. It doesn't care what the election schedule is. Maybe the trial could be given Labor Day. I don't know. It seems a little crazy. But I think a lot depends on these next 2 weeks watching this whole question. And the key is there might be a stay as well. But the key is the cert, the certiorari decision, and whether the Supreme Court, if they deny cert, then it goes back to the district court, circuit court's decided, and the clock starts going. If they grant cert, even with an expedited set of oral arguments and all the other stuff, you're still looking at considerable delay, I think. The courts are not going to, I do not believe all in all, when all is said and done, much as I respect the courts, and I think they have limits to what they can do, right? They have certain procedures that they actually follow, unlike Donald Trump and all. I don't know that the courts are going to save us here.
I don't either. But I'm still hopeful. My little candle is still lit. I haven't extinguished the flame. Okay. Before we lose you, you sent me an intriguing text that you said that you have a thought, re Biden and the Snickers bar. And so I kind of want to do that live. I'm fascinated by what your thought is on Joe Biden and Snickers bar deflation.
So I guess Biden was struck by an article, an op-ed, a column in the New York Times by some big shiny economic consultant for some bank or something about how, there's inflation, but also sometimes it doesn't show up because the price of a Snickers bar, I guess, is the same as it was 2 years ago, but it's 10% smaller. We all know this is a phenomenon. Companies do that. They're entitled to do it as long as they show you the right weight or size right on the package, I suppose. And Biden's like, this is why I'm getting hurt. This is all sort of the mystery. This is all answering the mystery of why is Joe Biden not getting credit for a good economy? Why do people think the economy is so bad and stuff? I feel a little bit self-delusional to me that the Snickers bar is a major part of the explanation. And I regard it, I guess, I'm overreading this. I regard it as a slightly bad, as I understand that Biden read this column, we're struck by this.
We have learned this week that Joe Biden has the normal media consumption habits of a senior of a boomer in DC. He watches Morning Joe and he reads the New York Times editorial page. All right, just like he's one of us.
And it's but I guess what's just is a little bit of I was looking for the magic explanations of why people are sort of not. Why Biden's approval is as slow as it is. And someone I sort of half feel that, I don't know, maybe people just don't want to be president for another 4 years. It's not his fault. It's not that we don't like him. I do think it comes back a lot to the age. And I feel like some of this, and then people, you've been through this real campaigns. They always ask the question, do you approve of the economy? Do you approve of immigration? Do you approve of foreign policy? Guess what? Those are all mostly, they follow the judgment of the administration. They don't cause it, right? You know what I mean? They're not whatever the statistical term is here. They're not autonomous variables or something. They are just and they go up and down all together. It's not like they're not. And so I kind of think Democrats are a little bit of only we could get that economic message out. It's not, of course, foolish, but and they're not really coming to grips with the fact that fairly or unfairly, it is in large part unfair. People don't want another 4 years of Biden Harris.
Well, that's depressing. I was hoping that you had a funnier take on the Snickers, which I do, which is that the American people could use 10% less of the Snickers bar. I got to tell you, when I'm at the airport and I just want a little chocolate, it's like, can I buy a piece of chocolate that is not going to give me a stomach ache? Okay, everything at the aisle is king size, extra king size. I was like, I don't need.
What family do you have? It's like those giant, but they charge you $6.99 for it. I mean,
yeah. Can I just have a $3.99 princess size Snickers bar? That would be fine with me. So anyway, I agree though. I'm not all the way where you are. I keep saying that I'm not setting April Fool's Day as my day. April 2nd. I want whatever the first batch of polls is after April 2nd. I'll start to worry. I do think that there's a lag on the economic stuff, and I'm hopeful that that's it. Though I think your explanation, I worry, in my little brain might also be possible. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that. Thank you, Bill. Hopefully you subscribe to our YouTube page here at Ballot Box. I don't know if you've seen the news. You'll be seeing more of me on this page. I'm going to be taking over the Daily Bulwark podcast. Bill will be with me very frequently, and we'll be seeing you next week. Peace.
Be well.